Thank you. Okay. To Mr. Phillip, distinguished faculty, staff, parents, relatives, and most importantly, the class of 2015. I've been thinking a lot about why I came to Westminster at the beginning of all this. And I'd like to say that it's because somehow I knew Westminster would teach me more than just how to get a correct answer. I came here because I knew I would learn how to truly think. But let's begin elsewhere. We're sitting here now for our very own commencement, a day we knew would arrive, just not quite this soon. The time has come for one chapter of our lives to close, but for the next to open. And by now, we know how these speeches tend to go. They begin with some sort of didactic story about a wise man teaching a naive student, from which we're inclined to extract some sort of life lesson that we can carry with us as we take the plunge into what Ryan called the real world. It seems like this kind of speech is presented as an opportunity to throw yourself into a minefield of cliches, where you can pretend to know more than you really do in hopes of inspiring everyone for the future. But this isn't exactly what I'm aiming for, because I can assure you I am not the wise man here about to bestow his great wisdom upon all of you. I'm only 18. Have I really experienced enough to have gained any real wisdom, other than maybe always eat your vegetables or don't skip chapel? All that I am is the same as what you all are, a proud member of the spectacular class of 2015, navigating his way through the web of life, and all that I hope to accomplish now is to make you think a little bit, so that you will come to your own conclusions about what it means to embark on this next big journey. But like all graduation speeches, I feel this one would be incomplete without some sort of extended metaphor or anecdote, so here we go. In a small and ancient neighborhood of the city of Barcelona, a traditional poetry competition is held every year. The Floral Games, as the competition has come to be known, were first conducted as far back as the year 1395, and since then have become possibly the most prestigious poetry contest in Barcelonian culture. And before you wonder why I've transitioned to talking about Spanish traditions, consider this. There are 3 prizes. The third best poem receives a rose made of silver, beautiful and polished. Second place receives a rose made of gold, worth more by far than the silver. And by now you're thinking, well, this is a bit strange. What does first place win that's worth more than the silver and the gold? The answer is that first place wins a rose. Not one made of platinum or bronze or any type of metal. First place wins simply a rose. A real, living rose, the flower itself. So what does this mean? What do the Barcelonians see in a living flower that makes it more valuable than gold, which is actual material value? And strictly speaking, we know the flower will eventually wither and die. Wouldn't it be better to earn second place and take the gold, something that has considerable worth? Interestingly enough, the prizes have been distributed this way for over 400 years. So there must be some sort of perceived value in the actual rose. And there are several ways to interpret this, but maybe the explanation lies in the fact that the living rose is truly alive. It lives, it grows, it changes, it develops, if only for a short while. It's not a solid, rigid object. The rose has true intrinsic beauty, something its metal counterparts lack. And maybe, just maybe, this aspect gives it more value than gold or silver. So think about it. Think about if that means anything to you. We're all about to head off into the real, bigger world with our entire lives ahead of us. The choices we're going to make, the things we're going to do, the people we're going to become, are all up to us and only us. We've been forging and creating our own poems, our own stories of our lives, our identities, since we started here at Westminster. Now, it's time to decide what we want to achieve with them. A solid metal object, or a living, breathing, beautiful being while we can. When thinking about the future, Certainly there's more to it than just figuring out what we want out of life. It's important to enjoy and live in the present too, without taking things for granted. Consider this, first proposed by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Imagine that the stars only came out at night once every 100 years. What would people do? Well, no one would sleep, of course. People would be overjoyed, excited, ecstatic, and even delirious to see the night sky filled with glowing stars and constellations again. The world would be in awe, right? Now for us, the stars come out every night, yet we choose to watch television or play games. To truly live in the present, in the words of Henry David Thoreau, we must learn to reawaken and keep ourselves awake, not by mechanical aids, but by an infinite expectation of the dawn, which does not forsake us in our soundest sleep. Live every moment as though it were the very moment of dawn itself. All right, so I think that's enough philosophical talk for now. How about something more concrete? Before I leave you, I'd like to tell one more story, one that I hope is a bit easier to relate to. And what it is, and you guessed it, is a story about the hardest math problem that I've ever attempted to solve during my time here on the Hill. And I say attempted because I haven't quite solved it yet. And frankly, I'm not sure if I ever will. It was shown to me a few years ago on one of Mr. Doucet's rap sheets. And for those who don't know him, Mr. Doucet is a math teacher that's pretty much always out doing Bikram yoga. But when he's not, he's in his classroom coming up with math problems so ridiculously difficult that they'll make you want to question what you're doing with your life. And that's precisely what happened. Anyways, the problem goes like this. Ready? A sheep is near a barn. How far from the sheep is the barn? That's it. Seriously. What is this even asking? How far from the sheep is the barn? That's such a strange question. There aren't even any numbers in it, and he put this on his geometry review assignment. I've been periodically trying to figure this out since third form year. But now, thinking about it 4 years later as I was writing this speech, I've come to think that maybe there isn't a solution to it. And for a certain reason, too. Because sometimes the meaning comes not from the answer, but from the question itself. In other words, correct answers are not important. Knowledge and wisdom are what count. Now I have to apologize because it seems that despite my earlier promise, that did turn out to be a little philosophical. But still, in the end, here we are, assembled together as a class for one final time. It may seem like an end, but in our hearts, we can all feel that it is only a new beginning. Set big goals, envision your future, don't overthink how far away the sheep is, and dream large, for dreamers are not the most unrealistic people in this world. And one more thing, don't forget, when you leave Westminster, why you came here in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Our commencement speech